I'll call the Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022 meeting, the Public Safety Committee to order. Staff has taken the roll. I'll entertain a motion on the minutes from January 26th.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Do we need people to say their names?
It's Alder Moore, he does the second.
Okay. Any modifications, changes? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, if there is anyone who wishes to appear on an item other than the county listening session, they can speak now. Otherwise, we will open up and have a dialogue. Unlike normally when we do things, we will have a dialogue during the community listening session, and you can speak at that time. So is there anyone who wishes to appear? If not, I'll declare the appearance section closed. Item 5, action item on street safety for cars. We'll be discussing that at the public listening session. We'll move to item 6, new business, public listening session regarding traffic safety in the city, Monona and Dane County. And I will turn it over to Chief Cheney Austin.
Thank you, Alder. Thank you for members of the public who are here, committee members who are here, and members of the public who may be watching this at a later date. This will be published on our city's YouTube channel, so please spread the word for those of you who are here. I'd like to introduce, well, first, Chief Jared Mcmullen from the Winona Fire Department, who many of you know, but he will be part of our listening session today, an active member. But our main organizer, representing staff from the Dane County Traffic Safety Commission, and also representing, if I may, Lisa, I think it's appropriate to mention Safe Communities, who the city of Winona has just become a formal partner with, thanks to the approval of Common Council. And Safe Communities and that organization does a lot of things. One thing that they do in particularly is help address some of the traffic safety concerns in and around our community. So a very special thank you to Lisa Bullard Cawthorn, and as well as Tom Duval, who have helped to organize this listening session. So I'll turn it over to Lisa, and Tom, I'm going to give you rights to show your screen here.
Fantastic, thank you.
Right, so as mentioned, Lisa Bullard Cawthorn with Safe Communities and Tom Duval, we're both part of this traffic safety project. And we also have somebody from Safe Communities, Steve Sparks, who's helping with our communications. So I wanted, and Laura Vandehay, are you on the call? I guess not.
Yeah, I don't see Laura here yet.
Okay, so I just want to say a little bit about this project before we get started. So Tom and I are both part of the Dane County Traffic Safety Commission. And as we're thinking about how we're going to prioritize our focus as a countywide effort, we felt that it was really important to get input from the community across the county. This listening session is one of 14. We've divided the county into 14 geographic areas. We're not including the city of Madison because they've got a separate project. For all those areas outside of Madison, we've got 14 different areas, and Manoa is part of that. And so we have a panel, if you want to move the slide, Tom. So we do have a panel of people that will be addressing some of the issues today. Several people have already been introduced, but the one person that hasn't been introduced yet is the Director for Public Works, Dan Stefani. And if you want to introduce, if you've got any other staff here, that would be great.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Also on the Zoom meeting, representing Public Works with me is our project manager, Brad Brune. I think as we move along through the presentation and when we get to anything related to Public Works response, you might hear from both Brad and I at that time. But hello and thank you.
Okay, so Tom, if you wanna, we'll get started. So I'll just first start out and talk about what the purpose of this listening session is. So first of all, part of the purpose is that we wanna provide, there was a traffic safety survey that was done. I'll talk a little bit more later about, the number of people and what the responses were, but we wanna provide those survey results back to the community. We wanna use this opportunity today to prioritize traffic safety issues that we can take back to the Traffic Safety Commission. We also are going to allow some time today to hear about some of the work that's been done and plans that are underway to address some of the issues that have been raised. And then finally, we want to talk a little bit about a process. This is a meeting to hear what people have to say, to hear the results. We want to bring people back together again to actually work together as a community to come up with solutions. Next slide. So we're going to start out with framing all of this with the crash data. So we're going to start out by sharing data with you that's countywide, and then we're going to focus on Monona. We're going to look at the crash data. We're going to look at those things that are contributory toward those crashes, as well as show people exactly where these crashes are occurring by looking at a map. So we're going to start out with the county. So one thing I want to bring up first of all is that this past year, there was an unprecedented number of traffic fatalities in our county. We had an average of about, 32, 33 over the last decade, but this past year we had as many as 50 fatalities that occurred on our roadways. If you want to go to the next slide. And this is a map of all the fatal crashes, and we just wanted to show that this is occurring across the county. Monona is not unique. It's occurring across the county. If we look at the actual number of crashes that have occurred, these are crashes that resulted in either a fatality or an injury. There were 133 crashes, resulting in 5 fatalities and 205 injuries. This is for a 5-year period between 2017 and 2021. These are some of the things that have contributed toward these crashes. So when we look at this, there were 36 crashes where speed was involved, resulting in 4 fatalities, 56 injuries. And I'll come back to the alcohol combination. We had 17 crashes that were from distracted driving, and we know that that's often underreported. 1 fatality, 29 injuries, 13 crashes where no seatbelts were worn, 2 fatalities, 16 injuries. And then 25 crashes that were drug or alcohol impaired, resulting in 4 fatalities and 8 injuries. Before you move on, Tom, the other thing that I want to bring up, which we're seeing on a county-wide level, is the number of crashes that were a result of both speed and alcohol and drug. And the combination, there were 3 fatalities and 13 injuries. And then this gives a little bit more information about the types of crashes. So we had 20 crashes that were teen drivers or teens involved, not necessarily the driver, resulting in 3 fatalities, 34 injuries. And I just wanted to point out that of these teen crashes, there were ones where there were pedestrian crashes where there was a teen involved, 1 fatality, 6 injuries, teen and bike crashes resulting in 1 fatality, and teen and distracted driving resulting in 1 fatality. And then there were 3 fatalities that were a result of teen driving and speed. Then we had 27 crashes that were those over 65, 1 fatality, 37 injuries. There were 12 pedestrian crashes resulting in 1 fatality and 18 injuries. There were 8 bicycle crashes resulting in 1 fatality. And I should probably mention the reason why the crashes and the injuries don't match is that in many of these crashes, there's more than 1 person that's injured in those. And then we had 6 motorcycle crashes resulting in 6 injuries.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you have any other age breakdowns besides over 65?
We could probably get those for you. The reason why so there's something called community maps, and they have flags, and they have a flag for 65 and older. But if that was something that you wanted us to get, we can certainly get that for you.
Just curious.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely get that for you. This next slide shows you where these crashes are occurring. And the red dot are those that were fatal crashes. The orange are those where there were serious injury. And then the yellow was minor injury. But I should point out that this was what was deemed to be the case. Once fire and EMS got to the scene, something that might have been classified as serious injury might not have been, or something that might have been classified as minor might have been more serious. So this just gives you an idea that these are occurring all over the county. The reason I want to show you this map is that this is called a cluster view, and what this is telling you is where the majority of these crashes are occurring. So we know that there's several crashes that are occurring on the Beltline. We see there's quite a few, 27 that are on Monona Drive, and then there's some crashes that are clustering on Broadway. So this just gives you an idea of where these crashes are most often occurring. And then we wanted to give an opportunity for the fire chief EMS director to actually say a few words about his experiences with traffic crashes and anything else he wants to say.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. When Chief Cheney Austin put this forward, I thought this was a great opportunity to provide a little insight into what we're starting here at Winona Fire and EMS. We are part of a national initiative to reduce the use of lights and sirens, responding to calls and also transporting patients to the hospital. We were lucky enough to be one of 50 agencies picked nationwide to gather data and try and figure out what, if anything, we could do to reduce our use of lights and sirens, because they are a significant cause of traffic accidents while we're responding and while we're transporting patients. So the initial information's out there. You're going to hear more of it over the next couple of months. We've already got some initial data pulled for the city. But I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of it. We're doing our part to help reduce traffic crashes as well within the city limits and also into the city of Madison. And I will say our initial data shows that we're already doing a pretty good job of that. Current data for 2021 up through January 31st of this year, we're running about 90% of the time without lights and sirens transporting our patients. So very rarely do we actually use them because they do cause significant issues both on the Beltline and in the city of Madison. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to put that out there, that we're working on that as part of this effort to reduce traffic crashes within the city. If anybody has any questions or wants to talk about it, my door is always open. I will expound on that until you choose to leave my office. So I think it's a really important thing. And we're really looking forward to making more of it. So
Great. Thank you so much. And one of the things that I really love about doing these listening sessions is that I've had an opportunity to work with some of the communities, and I've worked with Monona, I've worked with law enforcement and public works, and I know all the great work that's being done to address. And now I'm hearing about fire and EMS. So it's great to hear about that. So we're going to shift gears right now about those traffic surveys that were done. So I want anybody that's on the call that actually filled out the survey, we want to thank you for that. We had a total of 944 survey responses across the county, and 69 of those were from Monona. And so now we want to just show you some of the results that we found. If you want to move to the next slide. So the first thing that I'm going to do is talk about the general traffic safety issues. So anybody that filled out the survey would know that we asked about general traffic safety issues as well as location specific. So we're going to start out with the general traffic safety issues that people identified. And I want to also add that sometimes when someone mentioned a location, they mentioned what type of issue. So we combine those two. And of those responses that we got, there were 60 that indicated that speed was an issue, 45 were failure to yield to pedestrians and bicyclists, 44 were aggressive and reckless driving, 42 inattentive and distracted driving, and 12 were drug and alcohol impaired driving. So what we want to do right now is that we just presented the data to all of you, and we wanted to make sure that you had the data, you had the actual crash data that people resulted in fatal and injury crashes, and we wanted to be able to frame that. The survey gave us what people's perceptions are. We wanted to give you an opportunity now that you've heard the data. Tom, if you want to go to the next slide. And I just want to remind you some of the things that came up. So everything that was in the survey, so Tom is behind the scenes, ready to put up a poll for people to vote on. But before we do that, we want to give people an opportunity to add to that. And so what's already on the survey are all those things that I mentioned already: speed, failure to yield to pedestrians and bicyclists, inattentive and distracted driving, aggressive and reckless driving, and drug and alcohol impaired driving. So all of those are already on the survey, but I just want to bring up the things that the crash data showed us. So we looked at the speed related crashes, we looked at distracted driving, we looked at those not wearing seatbelts, and alcohol and drug impaired driving. We also looked at the number of crashes that were teen, the number that were over 65, and then we showed you information that showed us pedestrian, bicyclists, and motorcycle crashes. So what we want to do is give people an opportunity. If you want to go to the next slide, Tom. So what we want to do is, if somebody would like to, before we actually have you go on this poll, what we'd like to give people an opportunity to do is to actually raise their hand if there's something that comes to mind after they saw the data that wasn't actually listed. If you want to go back, Tom, to the previous slide. So if there was something that we saw in the crash data that wasn't mentioned, that isn't mentioned as one of these things on the left, we'd like people to raise their hand and let us know. And it looks like we've got Nancy Moore.
Yeah.
So I think that for this part and the other part, you need to mention your name and address.
Sure. My name is Nancy Moore and my address is 4505 Winacor.
Okay. And was
And
there
I'm-
another issue?
Actually, I had another question related to this data, if that's possible.
Sure.
Which is having just shown us where the crashes are coming from in Monona. I'm wondering if I assume that there is also data that shows potentially how the crashes compare to the section of the Beltline, if you will, that is Monona versus other sections of the Beltline. And I'm wondering if our section of the Beltline is the same or better or different in any way than other sections of the Beltline.
I can tell you that there are, I mean, I'm not looking, well, we did have the countywide we had the countywide map. There are sections, and I wish I had somebody from State Patrol with us today, that there are sections that there tend to be more in certain areas, and there does tend to be a cluster in the Monona area of the Beltline. So I can certainly make a note to myself, but when I showed that countywide map, you could see that there were certain sections of the Beltline where it was worse than other sections of the Beltline.
And I'll just add too, you know, I also have seen sort of the area wide, or at least a snippet of the area along the Beltline, and it did appear as if Monona had more than their share of crashes along that stretch. And later in this presentation, not too much later, I will be actually sharing a traffic dashboard that'll be available to the public, where you can actually zoom in and see where exactly all the crashes are occurring within the city of Monona, and highlight the crashes, and it'll give you additional information about each crash. And that might be helpful, but I think you raise a good point, Aldermore, with respect to how we compare to the other jurisdictions that share the Beltline. Chairwoman
Thank you.
Thomas.
Yeah, is Nancy done?
Yeah, I am done. Thank you. I appreciate the response. I look forward to seeing more.
I had a question when you talked about traffic safety issues for Winona. I noticed that it says failure to yield to pedestrians and bicyclists. But I will tell you that I have heard from a lot of drivers who talk about bicycles running stop signs, particularly like coming down off Tony Watha onto Winacor and running stop signs and pulling out in front of cars. And we have, I think it cuts both ways because we have bicyclists who don't follow the rules of the road and make it very difficult for some drivers, particularly at intersections or when they're phasing into from one street to another.
Yes, so is there something that you would like to add? So we've got this failure to yield to pedestrians and bicyclists, but if there's something that you would like to add to that, we see that countywide. We can certainly add something to our list. So we're hoping at this point that people add to the list because we're going to vote in a minute on a poll. So would you like to add something that?
Yeah, I do. I want to talk about the failure of the bicyclists to stop at stop signs and obey the law, the rules of the road.
So Tom, if you want to say bicyclists not following the rules of the road, maybe that's a simpler.
How would
Okay.
you say it, Chief?
Yeah, that's appropriate. If bicyclist failure to, obey sign or failure to obey rules of the road. And then, I'm sorry, is that?
No, that's true. Pedestrians are the same way. They jaywalk.
Bicyclists and pedestrians. And then the Reed household, I don't know if it's Mary Ann or Larry that has a comment or question.
Yeah, I had a question. Do you have in the numbers that you have, do you have a breakdown between Winona residents and non-residents? Because we have a lot of transit through the city.
I apologize, and I know you're a committee member, but just for the record, can you say your name and address?
Larry Reed, 5602 Winacor Road in Winona.
Thank you.
So our crash data that we shared with you today it's both. It's both those that are residents and it's those that are passing through. We can go back to DOT and try and pull that data. I don't know if you pull that data in your dashboard, Chief, but the data that we're sharing with you today is a combination.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So are there
Chief,
other?
I'm sorry, Lisa, in the room here, Chief Mcmullen.
Yeah, just
Oh,
real
sure.
quick, I wanted to follow up with Larry Reed's comment, because I agree. I think when it comes to dealing any type of PDSA action where we're going to be working on this, it really is beneficial to know if we need to be targeting outside of our city. I mean, we can come up with all the traffic safety training and ideas that we want, but if 80% of the accidents are caused by people outside the city of Winona, how are we addressing that as opposed to spinning our wheels to address the 20% of the issues that are caused within the city? So that might be a really beneficial piece of data to find out how much of this is caused by Winona residents and how much is caused by out of Winona residents.
Okay, we can look at that.
In an internal, and just briefly, and then I'm done talking, Lisa, for now. In an internal work group, when we were preparing for this and we were reviewing the data with the county and with Lisa and others, that question was also raised because there was a clear concern as to who the targeted audience should be when it comes to messaging. And I think that's a very valid point you bring up. That's something we definitely need to look into.
Yeah.
Alder Thomas.
I think it's not only who, but I think it's where. I mean, I'm sitting here wondering if we took out Monona Drive, Broadway, and the Beltline, how many accidents would we have actually that were injury related or fatality related?
Yeah, and the public dashboard that we'll be presenting, the public will have a means to do a geolocate sort of data set where they can manipulate the map and see exactly what area has what crashes and limit it or expand it as much as they want.
Right.
So that's a very good point too.
You know, the other thing that I just wanted to point out, and we know that there's people that are coming from outside of your community, but it does impact your resources. And so, you know, that's why it's important for you to see that information because of the impact that it has on your resources. The other thing that I wanted to just bring up is that this is why we want to look at community countywide efforts, you know, because we know that we can't just focus on one community. The hope with the Traffic Safety Commission is we look at this as countywide, you know, that there's certain issues that'll come up within a local community, but, you know, people are driving from one community to another. So it's important that we be thinking about it broadly. So thank you for bringing that up, and we will, you know, try and get that data for you. So were there other issues that people wanted to bring up before we vote on the poll?
I do not see any hands
Okay.
raised. Did I miss anyone? Okay, I think we're good to go.
Okay, so Tom, if you want to go ahead and go back to the slide. So the slide will give you either can use the QR code and go right to the poll, or he's got the link there as well. So we're gonna leave a couple of minutes, more than a couple, like 5 minutes, where people can go to the poll. And what we want you to do is vote, choose the top 3 issues that you think are important to you for the city of Monona.
Would it be helpful to actually put the link into the chat box?
Tom, can you do that for us, please?
Yes, I can. Just give me 1 second.
Thank you. Good suggestion, Aldermore.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
We didn't think we had access to the chat, so great.
I want to make a quick note. For some reason, the link that is different than the one on the screen. So please use the one in the chat box versus the one that's on the screen. Thank you.
Is the QR code right?
The QR code is correct, just the link on the screen.
Okay. So Tom, you can let me know when you stop seeing more come in.
Mhm.
And can you share with us a visual once we have them all?
Sure.
I think it helps for people to see it.
Mhm.
And you said you'd like 3, correct?
Yeah, your top 3.
Okay.
Are you still seeing movement, Tom?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Maybe somebody should have listed drivers from other communities driving through your community.
It's all of our community. But it's your police department and fire department.
I would think that differentiating between reckless driving and speed, as an example, might be kind of difficult for some people.
Yeah.
There's a redundancy there, obviously.
Right.
There is a question from the Reed household.
Thank
Melissa?
you.
Yes.
This one was a comment that Mary Ann Reed, 5602 Winacor Road, Monona, was going to make. in terms of where people are coming from. I think another factor that we're on the bike loop that goes past our house. And so a lot of people who are very unfamiliar with the area are going past our house. Many times we're in the yard and they reach the top of our hill and they'll go, which is the shortest way back to get to wherever? And I have to tell them, well, you're at the halfway point. You can either turn around and retrace or keep on going. So in terms of messaging for bicycle safety, because I do agree, a lot of bicyclists do ignore the stop sign at the bottom of the hill. And both if they're hugging the curb and if they are going in front of a car or a pedestrian, it's like it doesn't apply to them. So and if part of the effort is messaging, it's going to definitely have to be a county-wide effort.
Yeah. Okay. Tom, are you still seeing some come in?
We're at 14 responses right now, but it's been this way for last minute.
Okay. So I don't know how many members in the community that we have. If you're not seeing any more movement, then I think that you could show
Yeah.
the results if you wouldn't mind.
Yep, I can. Just give me 1 second. Here it is. Here are the results. So the top three, we kind of have a tie for number 3, but we have speed as number 1. We have aggressive and reckless driving is number 2. And then for 3, we have a tie between alcohol or drug impaired driving, as well as inattentive, distracted driving.
Okay. Okay, great. So we will we will give results back from this whole listening session, and we will definitely show this and what the results were, to the community. And I'll talk a little bit later about how we're going to use that information. So what we want to do right now is shift to the location specific traffic safety concerns. And I'll just wait for the slide. So what I wanted to do is just set the stage for this for a second. And so what I wanted to share with everybody is that we had 63 responses. All of these responses were looked at. All of the people that are on the panel, part of the municipality, actually had an opportunity to review all of the concerns that were mentioned. What we're doing today is we're going to bring the top issues forward. We can't talk about all 63 of them, but they all are noted. They all have been reviewed. What we want to do today is bring forward the top issues that came out of the survey, and we want to give you an opportunity to hear about some of the efforts that have already been made to address the crash locations and other concerns that are identified. We also want to have this as an opportunity to talk about some of the upcoming plans to address the concerns, and if there's some locations for future consideration for if there was additional funding. So then we're going to move on to, so the top 3 areas that came up were Winacor Road, Monona Drive, and Nicholls Road. Those were identified as the top unsafe locations in the area. So what we want to do next is we're going to move into providing an opportunity for the various agencies that were on the panel to talk about some of the things that they've done, that they have done in the past, that they're currently doing, and that they might be doing in the future that might be addressing some of these locations or just traffic safety in general. So I'm going to turn it over to the chief so that he can talk about the Monona Police Department.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you again, members, and members of the public. So I understand, as we all do in the police department and public safety in general, that we play a critical role in this piece of traffic safety within our community. And some of these things I'll bring up as some of the work that's being done. I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I've implemented here and maybe some hope for the future. I'm joined by virtually by our operations lieutenant, Lieutenant Weigel, and our assistant chief, Sarah Duman, who of course have been here much longer than I. And so they can help me fill in the blanks if there's something I'm missing. We did acquire speed and message board signs. We have 2 of them, which are operational. I think many of you in the community have seen those. We place them particularly in our what I'll call our residential neighborhoods. I did get some grief for posting a message board related to bicyclists and that they shall obey the traffic laws. The grief I got, I took it because it was warranted to post that message, that it's important for the bicyclists to obey the stop signs, to yield to pedestrians in a crosswalk, etc. Because I too am concerned about that. We will continue to utilize the message board feature of these speed board signs where appropriate. They're also used to give a caution and notice about construction ahead, detour ahead, or various community advertisement that we might want to do. And so we'll have to, as we brainstorm sort of messaging and best uses of these signs, we'll have to explore that option as well. Of course, they do also monitor and display speed. State law strictly prohibits municipalities in using the speed board as a means of enforcement. There, vis-a-vis, we can't issue a citation based on what is displayed on a speed board, solely based on what is displayed on the speed board. Nor can we attach any video or photographic device associated with that speed board. It's specifically indicated in state law. There's been some movement to change that, and some municipalities, are in support of that. However, it's not gotten very far. But I do think that the speed boards and displaying the speed is a deterrent, has encouraged folks to slow down. I know that won't do it in and of itself, that police officers play a role in enforcement and education. And so that's where this next concept comes in for directed patrol. That is a very cop way of saying traffic enforcement. So the officers may be assigned or may become aware of concerns about speeding, about failing to yield. They dedicate time to focus on that area, to evaluate and to conduct enforcement. Coinciding with that, something that is new this year, all of our patrol officers have been assigned what is referred to as a traffic sector. We've worked with our data analysts, our in-house experts as well, to identify the various areas throughout town that have demanded attention based on violations or complaints of violations. And so each of these sectors are assigned patrol officers on all shifts of the day, and they dedicate a special time to their areas of responsibility. So they may be assigned to work on one side of town, the south side, for example. However, their sector throughout the year is on the other side of town. It's understood and expected that although they're responsible for calls for service on that south side of town they're assigned to that day, they still have the responsibility and our expectation that they give attention to their specific traffic sector and the complaints and issues that occur within that sector. We formed a community response team. It is just that. It's a team of officers on an as-needed basis. So no, I did not get additional officers to support this team. So it's current officers who are assigned through a competitive process. They made it onto our community response team, and they will be rallied, so to speak, as deemed by myself or Lieutenant Weigel or Assistant Chief Duman, and activated on demand to address certain spikes of behavior. So say, for example, we've seen just a sharp increase of complaints where officers have observed sharp spikes of folks non-complying with certain traffic laws. This may be a potential for an activation of this 9-member community response team to give some directed attention to. Traffic grants, the great Lieutenant Weigel is very humble about his job, but he's actually brought in, with the assistance of the Bureau of Transportation Safety, hundreds of thousands of dollars to this community in grant funding so that we can focus on these very dangerous and hazardous driving behaviors of OWI and speed. With respect to seatbelt, I think Lisa said it best. We have some fatal crashes that were likely, fatal, unfortunately, as a result of persons not wearing seatbelts. Seatbelts save lives, and so we are a participant in a grant that supports seatbelt use. I can tell you, and I'll reiterate here, that I wholeheartedly, of course, support the use of seatbelts. It's state law, encourage it as much as I can. However, that said, we don't, as far as our traffic grants, we don't do primary stop for seatbelts. What I mean by that is that we look for the hazardous driving behavior as a primary reason for the stop. So a speed, or running a stop sign, reckless driving, coming into oncoming lanes. And as secondary to that stop, if we observe that the driver is not wearing their seatbelt, then that's when we pursue under this grant, potentially writing a ticket for that. So I've made that clear in other meetings. So I just wanted to reiterate that again. There is enforcement, but it is secondary to the hazardous driving behavior. That said, I again encourage everyone to wear your seatbelt. It saves lives. School traffic safety plans. Our school resource officer is working with our various schools and parents, students, faculty, and others, neighbors, to develop safety plans around our various schools, public or otherwise. And those are in the works right now. The school safety plans isn't something new, but I think it's something new to Winona. It's something that a lot of communities do in working in collaboration to make sure our students, staff, and others are safe when commuting to and from school. And then lastly, Tom, if you can give me my rights back so I can display my screen. Thank you, sir. I'm going to unveil a public dashboard. So members of the Public Safety Committee have already seen this dashboard. For some reason, hey, Tom, can you try just making me host? For some reason, it's
Yep, just did.
okay, thank you. I'm sorry, can you make, I should have clarified. Can you make the Brian Cheney Austin, he, him, his host and not the conference room?
You will have to do that.
You're the host.
Oh, yes, I will. You are absolutely right, because I'm the host. Okay. Give me a second, please. Make host. Yes, I want to make me host. And I will share my screen here. Okay. Can we see this? Yes. Okay, we can see it on our end. Okay. So, did I hear no? Okay, I'm going to assume folks can see it because I haven't heard any from. This is our public facing dashboard. I'd like to thank our analyst, our shared analyst, for helping to create this, who, by the way, is a Manoa resident, so he's got vested interest. But the dashboard, I think, is important. I'm a visual person. I love data. I'm a data-driven cop, and this very much helps paint the picture for me. And I hope that it helps paint the picture for the public. What you're seeing here are stars, circles, and squares, and diamonds. The key is on the left of what everything is. What you're seeing right now is everything this year. I just toggled this, which you have the option to do too, to everything last year as it relates to traffic crashes, traffic citations that we've written, warning citations, and that directed patrol that I was referring to earlier. You can zoom in, as I described, and you can zoom out. When you zoom in, you can highlight on a certain incident. You put your cursor over the certain incident, and of course, it's probably not going to work for me now that I'm demonstrating this, but it will show you eventually, there you go, additional details about that incident. Say if it was a crash like this one I've highlighted here, it says that there was a crash that occurred on the roadway, and the harmful event that was indicated by the officer in reviewing the crash was a motor vehicle in transport. That meant that was the most significant cause of that crash. It gives the exact location. It gives you even longitude and latitude if you wanted, and if it was an injury or not, and what vehicles, et cetera. There's a lot of data and information that's now available to you on this dashboard. But what I wanted to point out is that you can also sort of deselect or unselect, I should say, some of these. So citations that were written or warnings that were written. I should say your police chief is part of this too, because I've written some citations and warnings, including one yesterday at 77 miles, 2 days ago, I should say, that was traveling 77 miles an hour on Winona Drive. She got a ticket. So the stars, of course, show the crashes, but obviously we can see a little bit of a pattern here as we look to see where our crashes are typically occurring. The analyst was kind enough to sort of put a square, so to speak, around our what we consider a hotspots, where the vast majority of concentrated crashes are occurring. And both of those hotspots, I think there's another one down here, were along the Beltline, and one was on Broadway and of course 51. So Broadway and 51 and Broadway and Manoa Drive. And oftentimes I get questions about where we focus our enforcement activity. Now, that's not to say that we don't enforce behaviors along our residential street. That's an expectation as well. I've already talked about those traffic sectors. So of course we spend some time. But as you can see, you can imagine where a lot of our resources are spent and are dedicated because of the results of crashes, because of the results of the high propensity of injury crashes that your city police, your fire, your public works are responsible for doing our part to help keep safe. And so unfortunately, it ends up being that we spend a lot of our time on the Beltline, on Broadway, on Winona Drive. But that's not to say we don't spend time in some of these deep residential areas that I often get calls or emails about, understandably so. So there are, indications here of where we're doing directed patrol, where we've written citations, where we've, had a crash as well. But clearly, with the resources that we have, that you've provided your police department, I have to go and focus my attention to where people are likely to, unfortunately, be injured, or where we're seeing a high volume of crashes. My hope is that when talking through this data and evaluating sort of where we utilize our resources, I can hope to share with Public Safety Committee and our council the actual need for, number one, additional resources, but I think that we're probably about the level of volume where this community deserves a dedicated traffic officer, a specialist who can really pinpoint their time and attention away from going to Walmart for calls for service, away from assisting the fire department for medical calls, which is very important. But I think that this data shows the need and the importance of a dedicated resource strictly to address traffic. I've taken up a lot of our time, Lisa. I think that's it. But I am available for questions. And this topic is a standing agenda item at every Public Safety Committee meeting. So if folks have questions, they can write, email, or please feel free to attend a future Public Safety Committee meeting. Alder Thomas.
Now, I'm just going to say to you, you need to make this presentation to the council sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%, as much as I can relate. Alder Moore.
Yeah, Chief, I was just going to suggest that one thing that you might want to add to that list in terms of, or maybe, I don't know if that maybe you're putting it under Public Works, but we did also, I know the mayor spent several years working to get with the county to get the speed limit on Broadway dropped to 35. And at least from my observation, I'd be curious to know in terms of the data, if that's made a difference in terms of the number of crashes, but it certainly seems to me that even that 5 mile an hour drop has helped some. I don't feel like people are, obviously, I don't feel like they're fundamentally going as fast as they go, we all go down Broadway a lot. But I honestly don't know if that has, in terms of the data, if the ROI on that has been significant enough to list it as another initiative, if you will.
That's something to keep in mind, and I agree with you. There needs to be some comparative analysis and with every action we take, we need to, analyze and see if it's worked. So that's good. And I think that that's something to explore.
Well, thank you very much. It's very exciting because the one thing that I did not mention about the data that we shared is that we're sharing the tip of the iceberg. We're sharing the worst case scenario where people are injured or people die as a result. And your data shows those cases where they're near misses, and it's an opportunity where we can do something about and prevent the injuries and the deaths. So it's really exciting that you're looking at all that data together. And I think, Chief, it would be really great too if you could do a presentation at the Traffic Safety Commission, because I think that it's really exciting what you're doing.
Absolutely. Just real quick, because I forgot to mention, this will be posted both on our Facebook page, the link will be, as well as our police website. So we're working on that, and we should get that up and running so that all the public has access to that in the near future. Thank you.
Oh, great. So what I want to do is move us on to allow Public Works to say some things about the work that they're doing as well. And then we'll move into some other sections. Dan,
Okay.
if you wanted to share with us.
Sure, thank you, Lisa. So a lot of the crash data that's been presented focuses on the 5-year timeframe from 2017 to 2021. In Public Works, I don't believe it'd be fair to say that what we've done solely focuses on what where the locations of the traffic crashes are in this study, but more so in areas where in Monona, our staff and engineers probably felt we need to address overall safety conditions, whether it be for motorists, pedestrians, or bicyclists. But so I went through and I tallied up over the last 5 to 6 years. There's some other data in here previous to that of improvements that we've made here in the city of Monona. So I'm going to rattle off my bullet point list, and then if there's questions after that, feel free to ask any of me and Brad, who's also on the Zoom meeting here. But I think it was around the 2012, 2013 timeframe. We installed some digital speed signs on Nicholls, and we have it going westbound as you come down Nicholls, as you approach Maywood intersection. That was put up there to let motorists know of their speed as they approach that critical crosswalk for the children going back and forth to school. And the other one was eastbound, just east of Winacor Road, near the Blue Park as you approach the swimming pool. We put that one up there to address any speed issues, so motorists know what their speed is as they approach the parks and the swimming pool, because there's a lot of children and pedestrians in that area as well. In 2016, we added bike lanes on Frostwoods and Bridge Road. We also eliminated parking on one side of the street there, and we sort of shifted the lanes, and that helped address pedestrian safety at the Bridge Road Park. And we provided, the bike lanes for the bicyclists there. Since 2017, we've added rapid flash beacons in several areas throughout the city. The intersection of Nicholls and Schluter, I think everybody's familiar with that one. That's pretty much a blind hill and a blind intersection. We see a lot of pedestrians crossing the road there, whether it's the children going back and forth to school or people going to the library. But as you approach that intersection from the east or the west, you have a hard time seeing when pedestrians are crossing. So we added the rapid flash beacon. I'm not sure if it gets a lot of use, but it's there for people to use, and it does shine pretty good east and west for approaching traffic to see that. We also added rapid flash beacon on Winacor Road at Schluter Park, where the ice cream and bait shop is. And on Broadway at Falcon Circle East, there's a crosswalk there that people use to get back and forth as maybe as they go to Lottis Park, or where the sidewalks that go to the businesses at Broadway, Monona Drive in that area. So we have that installed as a safe way to cross Broadway. In 2019, we converted the stop sign configuration at Bridge Road and Winacor Road. We made it a 4-way stop. And that was basically done to improve overall public safety for all modes of transportation at that intersection. In 2020, at Frostwoods and Bridge Road intersection, we converted a 2-way stop intersection to a 3-way stop intersection. That was mainly to address overall public safety and to properly meet MUTCD standards for intersection stop sign configuration. 2019 and 2020, we installed sidewalks on McKenna Road as part of the road reconstruction project. And we also put sidewalks on Yahara Lane, Inland Way, and Bridge Road. Those 3 areas are in the riverfront development that you all recently experienced over the past 2 to 3 years of construction right there. In 2020, and I thank Alder Thomas for this one, she reminded me, and I quickly added it to my list, but in 2020, Alder Thomas mentioned the Winacor Road and Toniwatha Trail intersection where we have had issues with bicyclists kind of blowing the stop sign coming down the hill. So we added a blinking stop sign at this intersection, and we put up share the road signs. Those are yellow warning signs. And just to help let motorists know, let bicyclists know that you're entering a critical or a key intersection here, especially with that blinking stop sign coming down that small hill from Toniwatha. 2021, the Nicholls and Winacor Road intersection, we converted that to a 3-way stop sign intersection from a 2-way stop. As you are sitting westbound on Nicholls at Winacor, when you look to your right or to the north, it's a section of roadway that kind of jogs back to the east. So it was kind of a sight line issue, and that was installed to help improve overall safety there as well. 2021, for speed control, we installed 2 speed humps up in the northern Winacor Road area. One of them would be at Waterman Way, and the second one would be at Outlook Street. Those are more of the Madison style speed humps, and they do a pretty decent job of controlling the speed in that area. I know Alder Moore, who lives right in that area, she would probably be able to offer more information if they work or not, or if they're slowing traffic down. My hope is that they are. We also added our very first one in 2020 on McKenna Road, and that is not as effective as the 2 that we put in last year. We might look in the future at maybe upgrading that to be more effective. Some of our efforts for the future, many of you are probably well aware of the last 6 months or so. We've had a lot of public meetings with reference to South Winacor. After a lot of meetings, a lot of debate, and a lot of discussion back and forth, we do have a design that includes 4 speed humps throughout that corridor, mainly from Maywood south to Bridge Road. Those speed humps will help address speeding in the area. We'll be installing a sidewalk on the east side to help pedestrians, mainly get pedestrians off the street, making it more safe for them. We have identified bike lanes in that stretch as well, and then proper travel lane widths for the traffic in that area. And behind the scenes, working with Brad, he's done a lot of this information data collection, not really addressing traffic safety, but behind the scenes, we're gathering data. In 2020, we purchased our own traffic counter, and we probably have about a dozen roads done in the past year or so. But we're not only collecting traffic numbers, we're we're collecting traffic speeds. And we're sharing this with PD, Public Works Committee when it comes to that level. But we're gathering good data on what the speeds are of our local roads. So moving forward, when these discussions come up for more traffic safety items, we'll be able to go out and collect data. We will be able to share data that we already have. But as of right now, that's a bulk of what we've done within our department to help address traffic safety, pedestrian safety, and bicycle safety within Winona here. So, Brad, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that'd be our Public Works update.
No, the only thing that we could add was the surveys that were done with the university projects, and those are just surveys. So, I mean, you can take them for what they're worth. Other than that, the data speaks for itself. So.
Thank you so much. I mean, you know, one of the exciting things for me about doing these listening sessions is to learn more about everything that's going on in the communities. And I know, because I've said this earlier on, that, you know, Winona is quite at the forefront of doing work, and Winona has been for many years, and I'm familiar with some of the work. It's really exciting about what you're all doing there. And we really felt that this listening session had to include a part that not only looks at the crashes, not only shows the community back what the survey results were, but also to put it in perspective about what has already been done and what will continue to happen. And the community is incredibly receptive, and it's really exciting to hear about all the things that are going on or plan to go on. I want to check in with the chief about, we had this lofty goal for 1 hour. It is 1 hour right now. We've got 15 minutes at the end of this that we have content that we want to add. We also have this plan that we were going to allow 10 minutes for the community to add if they had additional concerns. So if you want to let me know what direction you want to go in right now in terms of time.
to take community input.
Yeah, I think that our priority is the community input. And so
Okay.
maybe we can sort of mention some of the slides we have left, but per Alder Thomas, we should focus on community input.
Okay, okay. So the next part of this, okay. So the next part of this is that, so we did have 63 responses to the traffic safety survey, and people had an opportunity to provide input about locations of concern. As I said earlier, we didn't mention every single one of them today. We mentioned the top issues. And so we did want to give people another opportunity to say something about other additional areas that might not have been mentioned on the survey that if they filled out. So the way that we were going to do this, if I understand correctly, is that if somebody wants to make a public comment, that they'll raise their hand. The chief will call on them. It's important that you give your name and address because they have to have a record of that. And what are we giving in terms of time for each person?
I do not at the moment see any hands raised.
Oh, okay.
Am I missing anyone who would like to speak?
I think it's, oh, yes, Alder Moore.
Yeah, well, I realize I'm part of this committee, so, but I'm obviously 45 Nancy Moore, 4505 Winacor. I just wonder if, I mean, we know maybe this is an impossibility from the standpoint of from Dane County. But, you know, we all know that Wisconsin has rather light, to say the least, ramifications for drinking while under the influence. and reckless behavior while under the influence. And I come from a state initially that, you know, has very similar demographics in terms of there being cold, long winters and people enjoying their alcohol, et cetera. But it just seems to me that, you know, and that being the state of Maine. And I know for a fact that when the state of Maine decided to crack down on OWI and take it more seriously, that it made a real significant difference in terms of the crafts. And so I just wonder if beyond the physical things that we can do to curb behavior, if there's something that we can do to influence the legislature in that regard.
Yeah, I think that, you know, this is where that part of the county-wide effort and our, you know, where our project is being funded by DOT and the efforts that are going on at a state level. And so I think it's important that we hear about these things that local communities are bringing up, as well as we think about how can these local communities have input on what happens at the state level. But I think, so thank you for your comment, and, you know, we will certainly note that and bring that back to the Traffic Safety Commission as well. What I wanted to do is it's sort of, do we have any other hands that are raised?
No, we do not.
So I think this is a really good time to sort of shift a little bit. We heard about it, Tom, if you want to go to the risky behavior, and I'm going to quickly go through this. So first of all, what I wanted to bring up is that we had this great opportunity to hear about some of the things that have been done, that have happened in Winona, but a lot of these crashes have to do with risky driving behavior, and the alcohol and drug impaired driving is one of those, as you mentioned, Alder Moore. And so I just wanted to remind people about what we've seen, but if you want to move to the next slide. So this is the part that you all had an opportunity to hear about, all the efforts that have been made by enforcement, by public works in terms of engineering, but we can't engineer and enforce our way out of this. There's a lot of unsafe driving from residents and people that are non-residents that are driving through. And we have to think about what we can do about this as a community, and what role can you as a community member, or, you know, people that are on the council, what can we all do together? And we just wanted to end today with just a few things. And Tom, if you want to go ahead, if we have time, we wanted to just get people to frame the issue. And then I wanted to just end with talking about what we're doing with the information. Do we still have time to do that?
We probably have about 5 minutes, and
Okay.
I can say that Chairperson Thomas has a question.
I do have a
Oh, sure.
question. When we talk about risky driving behavior for OWIs, do we look at those by ages? You know, I'm wondering if, you know, because when we focus on what we do about it, sometimes age plays an important role.
Yes. Yeah, we, you know, one of the things, and maybe, Tom, I don't know what you think. I don't know what we do about Randy's thing, because it's going to be longer. But I do think that I do want to mention something, Tom, if you want to move to the next steps for future engagement, because I do want to mention, while we're on the topic of risky driving behavior. So I just want to make sure that everybody realizes what we're going to do with this information. So with the traffic safety issues and those that were identified in Winona, we will share that back with the Traffic Safety Commission, because we're talking about county-wide collaborative efforts. Winona has been an incredible partner to that Traffic Safety Commission. But we want to talk about, as a Traffic Safety Commission, what are we going to do on a countywide level? But the other thing that I wanted to mention, because it goes back to your risky driving behavior is that we looked at the data on a countywide level and we identified priorities for this the next couple of years. And there's 4 work groups that we're setting up, one of them being risky driving behavior, because we identified on a countywide level that this was really important. So we're talking speed, impaired driving, distracted driving. And the other work groups are pedestrian crashes. We're talking about issues not only of drivers not yielding to pedestrians, but also pedestrians not paying attention. And we also have work groups that are, one is impaired driving, drug and alcohol impaired driving. And then the last one is racial disparities with traffic crashes, because we do see a definite disparities with those that are being injured. So those are the 4 work groups that we're hoping to, come up with some strategies, and then they can be brought back to the local communities to think about local strategies. And then the other part is the community engagement in terms of what we're hoping to happen next. Tom, if you could move the slide, next slide. So what we're hoping, and it's unfortunate, we wanted to frame the issues and just in a really, really short nutshell with what we were hoping to show you. And maybe, Chief, we can post this on your webpage. It's a recording of Randy to talk about, the safe system approach. And the whole idea is that you're not just focusing on one thing. You're not just focusing on the engineering. You're not just focusing on the enforcement, but you're looking at the road users and you're looking at the roads themselves. And in order to solve the issues, you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to look at all of them. And so what we're hoping is today was just an opportunity to hear what people had to say, to frame it in the data for people to know about the work that has happened already in your community, what is planned to happen. What we're hoping is that we bring people back together again in May. The reason we're talking about May is we want to bring all this information back to the Traffic Safety Commission. And then we want to have an opportunity to share ideas. There may be some things that the municipality has thought about and they want to share those new plans with the community, or the community itself might have ideas that they want to help develop. And so what we want to do is we want to bring people back together again to come up with solutions for the stakeholders in the community itself to work together and come up with a community solution. And so we're sorry that we went a little bit over. We're sorry that we didn't get to the recording that Randy did about the safe system approach. I think it's very informative and we would like to, air that somehow.
We can work to include that either on social media or on our website, Lisa. So
okay, perfect.
Connect on that. And I'll just add, I know we're wrapping up here. First of all, thank you for you and Tom and the others who've worked on this, Director Stefani, Brad, thank you for your collaboration with this. Obviously, this is something very important to all of us. I can tell you that recently I was asked to co-chair the racial disparity work group as it relates to this topic. So you do have Monona does have their hand in the pot, so to speak. And I think it's very important that we have some representative role in that. And then again, I'll remind members of the public that this topic is a standing item for public safety. I'm quite certain that Public Works also regularly discusses these as well. And we have a very engaged community. I want to continue to encourage that. It's one of the reasons I love working here. So please do send us your comments and feedback or appear at one of our wonderful meetings.
Great, well, and thank you. And I'm really excited about that dashboard. And I think that that's going to be a great opportunity for the community to really continue to see what is actually happening and how things are being addressed, because you're being led by the data. And there's, we heard today about all sorts of ways that, with fire and the project that you have, that you're looking at data and you've got your dashboard. And Dan, you were talking about the speed board. So there's a lot of data that's being collected so that your community can continue to respond. So I see a hand up before we close.
I just wanted to say, this is Kathy Thomas. When you are utilizing the community engagement piece. I hope that you will involve both the Public Works Committee and the Public Safety Committee, because they are Monona's vehicle to people, community people who are already invested in safe streets for all modes of transportation.
Thank you. So was there another?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Aldermore.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the Aldermore 4505 Winacor again, and I just wanted to say, Chief, that and to the county, first of all, thank you, and second, so glad that you brought up the racial disparities, because I don't want that to be overlooked in this. You know, we learned, Lisa, you spoke about data earlier, and we certainly, the other piece of data that we learned prior to the chief being here, when we looked at some data, was that there was definitely racial disparities in terms of the number of citations, number of stops, number of accidents, number of all of the above. That wasn't just related to the Beltline, or wasn't, you know, what it wasn't, there wasn't an obvious and again, I'm not making any accusations. It just was what it was. It is what it is, and so I'm really grateful that the chief has stepped forward for that committee, and I look forward to hearing more on that front. I just want to make sure that we didn't forget that a bit of an elephant in the room.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for to all of you for allowing us to do this on one of your meetings, and it's really exciting to hear about everything that's happening in Monona and will continue to happen. And we really want the input that we got today to go back to the countywide effort, because what you're doing in Monona is really exciting, and you continue to be at the forefront when it comes to traffic safety. And I think there's other communities in the county that can learn from the great work that you do, and we'll be writing up all of the results if people are interested to know as a county the county as a whole, that we will be putting some information together and sharing that with all of you. And Chief, we will make an arrangement with you so that you can, this is recorded, and maybe as part of that recording, you could add the bit that Randy recorded as part of that. So we'll talk about that later. So thank you very much, and hope that you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Tom, I'll take my host rights back, please. And thank you both, and Director Stefani and others that took part in this session today.
Okay.
I'm going to turn it back to our chairperson to resume the rest of our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to item 6B, discussion update on hiring process for full-time positions. Chief Mcmullen.
Well, good evening, everybody. This is just a real quick update. Joe, thank you for being a conduit between myself and Tom Sulfur for PSC. We're going to open up an internal hiring process for our open full-time position early next week. We have several candidates that are internal that are qualified, with the idea that we should be able to push our qualified candidates for a PSC interview by April 4th, I think is the date that we're shooting for this open full-time position. So
yeah, that's correct. There's a PFC meeting that should be officially scheduled for that date now.
Thank you. So that's the update on that. We are going to be opening up the process early next week.
Okay, we'll go to item 6C. We're going to stretch things here a little bit. We're going to do a discussion and action on possible hazard pay bonus for all fire department members for the previous 2 years of COVID response. Chief Mcmullen.
Well, good evening again. I'm going to get all my talking out of the way first, and I'll turn it over to Chief Kenny Austin. So in your packet, the chief was nice enough to amend the packet that was sent out after I got this put together. COVID's been tough. We're a combination department. We've got just a hair over 40 volunteers, along with our full-time staff and our part-time staff. And as the ARPA money was pushed out to communities, one of the signature portions of ARPA, the number 3 use on it was for premium pay, hazard pay, that sort of thing, for workers who continue to work throughout the COVID pandemic. So I reached out to some, not just area chiefs, but statewide chiefs to try and come up with an idea on how to, this is a tangible way to say thank you to all of our staff that continue to respond over these last 2 years. So I pulled data together from January 1st of 2021 through basically a week ago. That's the second page of this. You can actually see the number of calls that that our staff responded to. And what I wanted to do, instead of a flat rate, because it's difficult to provide a flat bonus to everybody and make it fair for the number of responses that people actually responded to. I took the time and went through all the fire and EMS calls that we responded to and broke it down by people. So the folks that responded more get a higher bonus. These are people that responded over and over again. The bottom line on that second page is 5,921 possibilities for my staff to get COVID. Those are all public calls where people are out and about. Fire, EMS, it doesn't matter. That's the number of calls with the number of people that we had responding. And what I want to really highlight on that 5,921 calls is we did not catch one case of COVID from any of our calls. Interim Chief Eckloff did an amazing job. He would never take credit for it, but he is the one that did the pivot in March, April of 2020 when this hit, with nothing budgeted for it, no plans for this. And immediately instituted some very nice protocols, matched up with the county. We've been following them ever since. Again, when I took this position back in October of 20, he had things well in hand when it came to the COVID response. I didn't have to do anything. So I came up with this. Totals about $31,000 out of the ARPA money that the city got. What I was looking for tonight was a recommendation from the Public Safety Committee to take this to the council. Again, this is a tangible way for the city to say thank you. We still have folks going out every day. If you note on the page on the back, you'll see some with an N next to them. These are folks that have joined up even in the middle of the pandemic and came to work even knowing that they're still responding during the middle of this pandemic. So throughout all of this, we still have new people coming on board, and a lot of new people. We've got many new people, like 12 so far over the last few months. And I've got 4 more that I'm interviewing next week that are looking to come on board. So this was what I came up with for a fair way to provide a flat bonus to everybody that responded to calls during the pandemic.
Source of funding?
The ARPA money that the city receives.
What the chief is looking for is a motion to recommend to the council that we approve this. Do we have a motion?
Aldermore, you're muted.
Thank you. So Chief, if you could, this is effectively back pay, correct?
It is effectively a one-time bonus pay is how it's worded in the ARPA funding, or premium pay is how it's worded in the ARPA language.
Right, and so
Student pay.
recognizing that as much as we all wish differently, COVID is not over. Do you anticipate that this would continue to be something that, you know, a year from now or 2 years from now or whatever, we would be back doing the same thing? Or do you feel like the overall number of calls has dropped substantially, or the risk has dropped substantially?
This is as far as I'm concerned, and I'm on camera, this is a one-time thank you to our staff for responding through this. I would guess probably the next 3 to 6 months, this is going to switch to more of an endemic response rather than a pandemic response.
Right.
Just based on call numbers and the way things are going throughout the country currently. So there is no thought in my mind that this would be any type of recurring or any of that. This is a one-time the folks that are still active on the department that managed to make it through the entire pandemic and still managed to do fire and EMS calls is what this is for. It's a one-time thank you, hazardous pay, premium pay, however we want to term it. But especially with the inflation being what it is right now, this is kind of a little bit more tangible way to say thank you to them.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, this is not, I mean, I've noticed that several private sector businesses are doing similar kinds of things. So I will ask for the last time, is there, does anybody have any questions? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? If you think it's a good idea, you want to make a motion to recommend it to the council?
Question first, how much ARPA money did the city get in total? And so what proportion of that would this be?
This is a total of about 3% of the ARPA money. They got a roughly 860,000, somewhere around there.
Are there other specified uses that are specific to fire departments, police departments, both, anything like that, that you've also been considering?
I think the only thing that's been funded out of ARPA has been the Lexipol policy and procedure project for both of us that was funded out of the ARPA money. Other than that, I don't believe there's any projects that I'm aware of for the remainder of that.
I think it's challenging. We're very limited what we can use the money for.
I'll make a motion to recommend the hazard pay.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Connie,
Discussion?
I have a question. Have any other Monona departments or department personnel asked for the same type of thing, or is it because there's a lot of people that have worked through this, and I'm, given my background, I've got, I got to think of, the police department and things like that. Is it going to be reasonable to expect now others to step into? Because I'm totally behind, fire and EMS, just knowing in the past that if I did call, somebody was going to show up, even in the height of the pandemic. So there's no hesitation on that. I'm just curious how this will go forward once this gets disseminated, that this has been recommended by this committee.
Will the police department want and expect the same thing?
I think there'll be something equivalent coming. How they determine that is going to be up to them. I can tell you that just within Dane County, there's 3 or 4 departments that have done something similar for their fire and EMS departments. They've done a flat payment. And if I do that, I can tell you Middleton, I think, was a $1,500 flat hazard pay bonus. And I've got 63 members, so that's $70,000. And again, I wanted to tie it more towards the folks that actually responded, as opposed to getting a $1,500 payment because you happen to be on the department, even if you haven't responded to any calls.
Do the administrator or the mayor know we're talking about doing this?
The administrator's aware of it, yes. I try not to spring any surprises on anybody.
And his thoughts on the matter?
He thought it would open the discussion for the rest of the city. So.
Yeah, that would be my only concern, because like I said, I certainly understand your request. I think you did it very fairly, which I appreciate. I mean, it makes sense the way you did it. But I certainly would be open to others as well, because I think we're as a community, we were treated really well during a really tough time.
So let me make a couple of thoughts. You can make a motion that the council approve it. You can make a motion that the council discuss the issue without recommendation, pending further review. Whatever you all feel comfortable with. So I would ask Joe, how do you want to word your motion?
I mean, in my history on the committee, we're usually recommending a course of action. We don't,
Yep,
we haven't
yep.
tended to recommend just discussion historically.
Yep.
So I guess that was my ongoing assumption. But if you think it's more appropriate to do it in terms of a discussion, I'm certainly open to that too.
I think it's up to how you all feel. I mean, we have to worry about the police, we have to worry about the, the police department, and are we gonna do that? The council and the mayor can figure that out. But know that if I'm sitting here, I could bet that next month there will be one that comes from the police department. So-
Smart woman.
So, and if, I don't know how much one would come from, how much would cost for the police department. And shame on me, I should have talked to the mayor and the administrator to see how they thought, although I know that there's not overwhelming demand right now for that money that I'm aware of. So it's not like we don't have the resources and the money to do it. And the other thing you can do is if you want to wait and find out or get further information, is there any reason that we have to?
I am happy to table this for a month. Again, I'm happy to be the icebreaker to start the discussion. It does.
So technically speaking, it doesn't say on here action item. So we're more appropriate to discuss it and take action at the next meeting and talk to the police, see what's going to happen with the police department. I mean, there's police, there's also public works.
Dispatchers by way of police.
There's all kinds of people. So I guess what if you want to talk about it a little bit, think about it some more, and table any act where you don't have to table, you can withdraw your motion and we'll put it on for action at the next meeting. Does that make people look like they'd like to do something, but they're uncomfortable at the moment taking a decisive action? Am I reading people clearly that way?
Kathy, what's occurred to me is if we do it for police and fire and public works, what about city hall staff? Because all of our city employees had to work through this and had to go through the risk of coming to work. And dealing with COVID. And I don't know how many city employees may have caught this or been affected, but I didn't see anywhere where city business was negatively impacted.
Angela, did you want to say something?
I did. I was thinking about the optics of how this looks, choosing one entity of public safety over others. And I appreciate the chief wanting to break the ice, but I personally would feel more comfortable if it had been if it's been discussed and vetted, not only with the city administrator, with the mayor, the council, something, finance, something, and other department heads, because it makes it seem like we're choosing one department over others, and that makes me uncomfortable from a HR perspective. I'll just be real. I wouldn't like it if, even though it may come, a month or two next from Chief Cheney Austin for police. Well, why did the fire get it first? That could cause some morale issues, I think. Just being human, that would make me uncomfortable, but that's just my thoughts.
And I'll respond to that, and Alderman, I know you got your hand up. My intent here was to break open the discussion, because again, When it comes to the city of Monona, I have to be very careful here, because if I go to the mayor and the city council, I also cause issues because I didn't bring it to public safety first. So I have to be very careful with how and where I initiate discussions in a public way. This is the first avenue of public discussion before I bring it to the council.
Yeah, I get real crabby if it doesn't come here first.
And I've learned that lesson. So the administrator is aware of this. Again, I don't try to spring surprises on anybody. So I made sure he was aware it was on the agenda. He got a copy of the proposal as well. His only comment on it was, this will probably start the discussion for the rest of the city. So again, I have no problem in tabling this and waiting and trying to do a more comprehensive public safety proposal with the police department. My hesitation beyond that is we don't have writ here for the rest of the city. The rest of the city is not the public safety committee's concern. Again, I have no problem waiting and putting together a proposal with my partners at the police department. Again, I didn't mind hacking a hole in the ice to be the icebreaker tonight. So I'm more than content to sit for a month or two. That's fine.
So Joe, how do you feel about withdrawing your motion?
I can withdraw the motion under those circumstances. My only question, maybe mostly to Kathy and Nancy, is it helpful for us to make a discussion motion as sort of another chop at the ice? Or is it good enough that we've gotten it on the agenda and you can work on that informally and we can circle back at another meeting?
Let's put it on the agenda. Let's see where we go with the police department, because we deal with police and fire. Because I think that will be one of the questions that comes up. What do we do with the police department? And does the city as a whole want to take part of that money and reward all staff? I mean, Public Works will raise the same question, I think. So, so if we withdraw it and we have a little more internal discussion, the chief Cheney Austin will have to figure out if he's going to do it for the police department. How is he going to do it? And again, and then there's Park and Rec department, and there's all kinds of people. So it's a broader discussion, and as they found out on certain ships, it's the tip of the iceberg, as they say. There's much more underneath that we have to look at before I think we can make a decision, because the city has tried to be fair across all departments and be considerate in terms of COVID and being understanding to our staff. And I think this is no different than any other situation. So let us do some more digging and talking, and we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Aldermore has it.
Yes,
Aldermore,
You're muted, Aldermore.
you're muted.
Yeah, you think I'd get this by now, huh? I would just say, from my point of view, there doesn't need to be a motion from this group that the city from a wider standpoint should be discussing this. I mean, we know that ARPA money is there. We also know it's there for, first of all, we only get half of it this year and we get another half of it down the road, and it doesn't have to be spent all at once. So the notion that somehow, it's going to sit there and burn and we don't have anything else to spend it on, I think we're not there yet. And so I think it's something that the city as a whole needs to take up, the city council needs to take up, and I don't know that it moves the ball any further forward to have this group make a formal motion to have it discussed at the city council. I very much appreciate the chief bringing it forward to this group first as a way to get discussion going. To remind us that we need to do that. Should be on our agenda anyway.
So to confirm, motion withdrawn.
He withdrew his motion. So there's nothing on the table.
Okay, and so we'll put it on for the next meeting. But so Alderman Moore?
Yeah.
Do you want to make a motion or?
No, I don't feel like we need to make a motion. I think that from my point of view, I mean, I can, but I don't think we need to. I think it's just,
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
yeah, I mean, I just think we need to let the city administrator and mayor know that we think that the city needs to have a conversation sooner rather than later as to whether the application of funds across any, to Angela's point, I think it is something that we need to be dealing with on a holistic, from a holistic standpoint. And so I think it needs to go on a city council's agenda.
So what I will suggest to the mayor and the administrator is that we had a discussion here. We talked about the fire department. We know that will lead to the police department. That may lead to other people. Do they want to do something in total? Do they want us to do it separately and see how they want to proceed with it? And we'll put it back on our agenda for discussion at the next meeting. Does that work for everybody? Okay, good. Okay, so we'll move on to item 7, discussion of future agenda items. Is there anything any of you want to see on the agenda? I will say the same thing I say at every meeting. If there's something that occurs to you that you want us to talk about, then send the chief or myself a note and we'll include it on the agenda. Do we have any updates on diversity, equity, or inclusion from either of you two?
Yeah, just to say that I've been in communication with a potential trainer for both police and fire for DEI training. It's somebody from a group called Expo, and they are looking to form a good relationship with the city of Manoa, particularly its public safety team. So we're in the early phases of sort of exploring what that might look like for police and fire, and the chief and I have to connect on that yet, but that's in the works.
Okay. Do you have anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. We'll move on to reports, fire department.
Sorry, Alder Thomas,
Moore?
if I might, thank you. Chief, I'm wondering, I mean, maybe this isn't the appropriate place to ask, well, although I assume that DIB might be the appropriate place to ask. I'm wondering, given the continuing spotlight, if you will, on no-knock warrants, and knowing that we spent a lot of time looking at some critical policies prior to your arrival here in the city of Winona and a little since then. If you could just speak to that particular strategy, tactic, and particularly as it relates to the state statutes in Wisconsin and our own policies, if you will.
Yeah, I'll just say that in general, within Dane County, no-knock warrants are extremely rare. And in my experience as a police officer for a couple decades, they are extremely rare. No-knock warrants are typically issued when there is a high probability of, death, great bodily harm to the officers executing said warrant. Not necessarily the case, although it can be factored in, but not necessarily the case because there's the suspicion that evidence may be destroyed. Sometimes that's factored in, but overwhelmingly the case is that there is a high propensity for the subject of that warrant to go armed or has a history of being armed or and it provides law enforcement with a and then I know that there are nationwide cases of this not occurring, and I understand why no-knock warrants appropriately so are part of the conversation, but it provides a tactic and tool for law enforcement to operate and effect that warrant safely. That's the intended goal and purpose, is that the warrant is affected, is done so more safely. However, I understand the arguments that many might have, and some do have, that it is in fact unsafe. And so I think what you're seeing is that law enforcement, particularly in our area, is adjusting to that. And my particular stance on that is there will be a very, very, very rare instance in which I, as chief of police, will say yes to that. I can't imagine a case right now that I can think of saying, yes, please apply for this no-knock warrant. I think that the vast majority of times we will have what is considered a standard warrant, if there is such a thing. So I don't, with that said, Alder Moore, I don't know if that's necessarily, if the state decides that they want to do away with, no knocks, or if others decide that, I will wholeheartedly respect that, but I'm not sure if that's a tool I want to take away, because there may be a situation, there very well may be, where that is a tool that your police department may want to utilize so that everyone is safe.
Thank you.
Could I just add something there? And I appreciate the chief's opinion on that, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. I think for someone who's actually had to stand in a line outside a door while you're knocking, I think you've got to factor in the safety of those officers standing outside the door, and that it should be incredibly rare because it's dangerous to everybody. But yeah, those are tough assignments to get. And to take it as seriously as we do is important, but to do away with it, I think would be a mistake. That's just one person's opinion.
Right. And please understand, I wasn't suggesting that we do away with it. I just didn't even know what the state statute was, if we have a written policy. I can't recall seeing that policy in particular and second, it's reassuring to know that it's a rare occurrence. Clearly not the case in some jurisdictions.
Okay, questions? Now we'll move on to the reports. Fire department.
I got a real brief report tonight, so match me if you can, chief. So I announced this at the city council meeting on Monday night. Governor Evers has approved a $27 million update for EMS funding for the state. The three program areas are our funding assistance program. He allocated additional $8 million into that program for fiscal year 23, which will equate to normally get about $7,000 a year out of that, split between equipment and training. Next year, we should get roughly $25,000 or $26,000 from that particular program. Also $12 million for a grant program specifically for EMS. And then a 16% increase in Medicaid reimbursements statewide, which is a welcome thing as well. I'm going to highlight my staff. We did a fabulous job last year. Came in, made a lot of changes right away, especially on the EMS side of things. Our revenue went up by $60,000 last year. And that I'll directly attribute to my staff doing a fine job for documentation and billing. And that's $60,000, not even counting the first 2 months of last year, because we were in the middle of the switchover. So did a really good job on that. Revenue is doing very, very well for the fire department. That's all I got. So
Can you top that?
I'll try. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Alder. Our recruit officer, our new officer, who's back in the academy and doing exquisitely well, acing tests, So we'll continue to support the officer at Blackhawk. Your police department has been heavily involved in doing more community engagement activities. More recently, I mentioned this at council, the polar plunge for Special Olympics. Your police department was prominently on display in uniform more than any other agency out there, including the whole city of Madison. So I'm very proud that we are a visible supporter of the athletes in Special Olympics, but also showing that we are all about community engagement here. And that's just one of, I think, many examples. I will mention, if you're not aware, the Snow Snake games on Friday at 3 p.m. There will be snow. I just saw a dump truck coming here filled with snow from Public Works that is delivering snow to San Damiano, and the chief has reported that there is snow now. So that is, again, Friday, 3 p.m. And Aldermore, did I steal your thunder this time around? Okay. And then lastly, I think I'll just mention, as I did at council, be remiss if I didn't mention the results of the federal civil suit brought against the city that came out last week. I made a statement about this in writing, but I just want to let members of the public and the committee know that, you know, that suit, obviously, that whole case has had an impact to this entire community, has had a particular impact on the police department. And I'll just say that we're growing from that, and we're learning as we do every day. And we hope that as a result of all of this, we will be, you know, an even better community and police department and a safer community moving forward. But I just, you know, wanted to acknowledge that, you know, we, you know, respect the decision. I particularly appreciated the fact of the judge pointing out the complexities of the job that police officers do on a day-to-day basis, with sometimes very limited information and having to respond very quickly. The whole goal, aim, and purpose there was to, you know, preserve life and property. And so, but we've learned from that, and we've obviously have adjusted on our end to make sure that we do things and, you know, in proper format moving forward. So that's it. Thank you.
I do have one last thing that I forgot to mention. The public safety building project is moving onward. We're meeting with them every 2 weeks.
Yes.
I just met with them today. So there is progress on that front. Nothing concrete to report today, but there is progress. So
Lexipol.
Oh yeah, and Lexipol, policies and procedures. We're moving forward on that. I think we both had our kickoff meetings with Lexipol this week, so we're moving forward on the policies and procedures project as well.
Joe, do you have anything from police and fire?
No, other than what we've already mentioned about the upcoming meeting on April 4th.
Good. Okay. Next meeting will be March 23rd, 2022. If all goes well, I will be Zooming you from California.
Oh, I know that's really good. Nice.
So, motion to adjourn is in order.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If you're able, go to the games on Friday. I'll see you on the 23rd. I won't be there on Friday. I take my husband someplace, but